Pilot Flying J vice president is getting a chance to make his argument that highly charged racial recordings improperly prejudiced his criminal conviction. A federal appeals court says Scott Wambold doesn't have to go to prison right now while his case is reviewed. The appeals court also agreed to put off sending former President Mark Hazelwood to prison over those recordings. Last year, a federal judge allowed federal prosecutors to present the secret recordings from a 2012 pilot sales employees event. Wambold can't be heard on the recording, and he objected to them being played for the jury, saying they were highly prejudicial against him. Another former pilot sales employee, Heather Jones, is making the same argument, but the court hasn't ruled on her appeal as of yet. A jury convicted the trio of taking part in a plan to defraud some pilot diesel customers of promised fuel rebates. East Tennessee Children's Hospital is warning parents